sophistication. Oh, what have they done to Earl?
Ruined him, that's what they've done. Well, it's not even they, is it? It's AI. Like, AI made all of this.
Exactly, you can't even call it art, it's a Van Gogh ripoff.
This is meant to be the future of art.
If this is the future of art, I think we might be in trouble.
If a generative AI is asked to create a picture, it does so after being trained on vast troves of imagery. It can't produce, for instance, an image of a snail riding on the back of a donkey in the style of Michelangelo without learning what snails, donkeys, and works of Renaissance art look like. This is how systems like DALL-E and Stable Diffusion function. But it angered artists and copyright holders alike, who say this process is akin to having their life's work stolen, then imitated on demand, without giving any credit. It's already resulted in multiple lawsuits, including one filed by Getty Images, which was quick to point out what looked like a corrupted version of its own watermark appearing in AI-generated images. But in the art world, nothing new is produced without some influence from what came before it. So how is this different? The late Steve Jobs once said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." But he stole that line from Picasso, who in turn, it's been suggested, adapted it from something he'd read in a magazine. So maybe a better way to advance the argument isn't just to ask if AIs are producing highly derivative art, but whether the AI is even an artist at all.
Jason Silva, you're a content creator, a filmmaker, and you're also an artist. What do you make about artificial intelligence and art right now?
Well, what I think is very exciting about what's happening with AI art, and by the way, thank you guys for having me, but I feel like it's this culmination of like shrinking the lag time between our imagination and the ability to sort of instantiate our imagination through this coupling between imagination and synthetic intelligence.
But isn't that buffer time the creative process? I think, some critics would say that the process itself, the journey of artistic expression, is just as important as the product itself. What's your response to that?
Well, I think that is a fair point. I think for sure sometimes the creative process and the wrestling with the material and having to learn the craft is part of the muscling of our expressiveness, for sure. But when we first, developed tools like, digital tools for illustration, or even the technology of the oil painting, I mean, those were tools that, there was a learning curve. But before there was oil painting, there was no possibility for Vincent van Gogh.
Which is represented here, as you can see.
Yeah.
Very accurately represented here.
I feel like every time we have a new technology, a new tool that an artist can use to express himself, I think it's a good thing. And while I agree with what you're saying about like there being a value to having a learning curve, with AI art, yes, there's an instant capacity for the realization of a visual work of imagination, but the better ones are still going to be the ones where people learn the tricks of evoking the right prompts or the right spell casting, and so it will, I think, over time, it create a new kind of artistry, which will be who can prompt the better artistry from the AI platforms.
I don't think I cast any spells when I attempt to do art. I mean, you've seen my art. We've had an example of my art on this show before now. And
no offense, Nate, but it was very...
It looks facetious, but it's not. It's just terrible. And that makes me very excited about AI in general, because now I can actually look like I know what I'm doing.
But there are going to be people that might know the difference and might say, hey, look, I don't think this guy knows what he's doing, although... I don't know, it could fool some, but...
No, they'll think I'm a genius. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think our creativity is really what defines us as a species. I think in so many ways, it hints at our capacity to not just perceive the world as it is, but to take in data from our senses and kind of remix it in our mind's eye. And so our capacity to imagine what doesn't yet exist and then bring it into existence, that's the hallmark of our creativity and part of the great mystery of what makes us, not just human beings, but human Imagineers.
Earlier this year, there was, let's call it art for the sake of argument, there was a banana duct taped to a wall. And,
we're not picky here with our art, as you can see.
And someone ate the banana, they ate the artwork, and someone put a new banana back in its place. Now, it's not my place to sit here and say whether or not that was good art or not, although for the record,
we have thoughts.
It's fruit on a wall. But that's not really something that AI could disrupt, right? What's the AI banana on a wall?
Yeah, good point. Well, in the world of high art, to each his own, sometimes the things that get sold as high art for exorbitant amounts of money are pretty astounding. But again, to each his own. That's the wonderful thing about art, is that anybody can choose what they think is artful or creative. I think it'll be interesting with AI art, whether AI art starts getting sold for insane amounts of money or not. I tend to believe that as these technologies advance, the price point eventually goes to zero.
I tend to think that it feels optimistic if I'm an artist who's kind of been doing work through more analog forms, and now that you have AI developed art kind of coming in and flooding the market, like you said, that could dilute the value, and how we price that is tricky. But I guess when it comes to the artist's perspective, is this hindering their ability to make money? Is this going to kind of become, a much, a different kind of, profession?
These are legitimate concerns. There's a lot of disruption happening, and it's only the beginning. We're living in an age of exponential digital transformation, and so we must get ready for these challenges and for these questions that will come up.
How do you go about crediting AI-generated art? What was conjured up in your own mind versus what was derived from something else? How do you go about that process?
So I would say, this art piece was done in collaboration with digital sentience. Let's get playful here. Like when you type in the prompts, they're pulling from this 11-dimensional latent space.
Sounds a lot like string theory.
It has, but in this latent space, basically it's infinite possibility. So if you do a prompt that says, orange bananas flying through the sky amidst grizzly bears and psychedelic cotton candy, it's pulling from what this sort of synthetic imagination has read from all the data training of all of these, the suchness of these concepts. So there's a region for banana-ness and a region for grizzly bear-ness, and then it pulls from those latent spaces and through the process of diffusion brings it into a static image. That's very similar to this world of our inner life, but I suspect that through this AI art, we could learn about imagination by essentially building a synthetic imagination.
God, bananas keep coming up in art. Bananas.
We've gone down a fruit rabbit hole.
Yeah,
we have.
On that note, Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate it.
Boris Eldagsen, thanks so much for joining us. I know you call yourself a lens-based artist, and I was fascinated earlier this year when you made headlines turning down an award, a very prestigious photography award, because you'd used AI-generated art to win it. Can you talk us through the story there and how that unfolded?
I applied to make a test. I wanted to see if photo competitions are aware of the possibility that people hand in AI-generated images. I'm very active in the German scene, do lectures and workshops on AI-generated images. So I checked last autumn the big photo competitions, if they have changed their guidelines or not. And if they haven't, I just applied with an AI-generated image. And so I did with the Sony World Photography Awards.
But you knew what you were doing, right? This was kind of a cheeky move on your part.
Yes, but I had no further plan where this is would lead me to. You can't just have an evil master plan and just start like this. It was just, okay, let's do a test. Let's see what happens. And I applied at 3 different competitions, and 3 times I was amongst the finalists with the same image.
And where do you think the responsibility lies in more broadly speaking, in the disclosure of use of AI in photography, whether that's purely generative stuff or just in terms of very advanced retouching or manipulation?
I think the main problem I saw, and this is why I wanted to speed up the discussion by my refusal, is that the photography world has not come to terms with the new situations. Most players in the photography world have no position on the relationship between AI-generated images and photography. So I had to do something disruptive to get this conversation going, and I'm very happy that it is, happening on such a big scale right now.
Why do you think there is a hesitation to take a stance? I mean, either you believe that it's art or you don't, but it sounds like there seems to be a reticence, like if you do, then you have to do something about it. But what are your thoughts there?
I think it's quite complex, because one thing is it photography or not? And then you can say, is it art or not? And what's your definition of art? It looks like photography, but it is not photography in its definition for me. For photography, you need a lens. There's something in front of the lens which reflects light. If you generate an image by AI, it's often done by a prompt. This is why I like the term promptography. And you don't need a lens, you don't need an object. You need the internet, a browser interface, and a vision of how this image should look like.
I love that word, promptography.
Well, we're making stuff up now, and not so dissimilar from like, there is no vocabulary to describe a lot of like what's coming out. And how important is the process of, you know, creating art and the journey and the imagination behind it, as much as the product itself?
I think it's very important, and both differ. The process of photography is different from promptography, and the more I work with both, I think it's very important to tell that I like both. I'm not pro photography only or pro AI generated images only. It's like, I don't know, like a mom and 2 kids. I haven't invented it, but I feel very close to both techniques. There are some things that only photography can do. I have been photographing at night in Berlin for 15 years. It is like a hunt. When I'm creating images on my laptop, I can be wherever I want to. The world around me is not important. Then I create the images out of myself, for my knowledge, for my experience, but there is no interaction and there is no decisive moment.
Will artificial intelligence democratize, broaden access to art, or simply dilute the value?
It's a bit more complex. For me, AI is not something that can replace me. It is going to replace a lot of professions for sure. It also creates new professions. And what most people don't see is that you have knowledge, you have skills, you have experience, and you can use it in collaborating with the AI. Then it really is a co-pilot. But I'm the pilot, I'm the director, and I make the decisions. And for me, AI is not something that is above me. I use it as a tool. It's an augmented intelligence.
Really briefly, is there a piece of advice that you give to amateurs, you know, new entrants to the photography world, or even professionals who are worried about the future of their careers, to help them navigate some of the issues that you see coming down the line?
Yes, I think you need to know how AI image generators work. And to the professionals that come to my workshops, I encourage them to use their knowledge and to find their unique way of working with AI. everything is like undiscovered territory. There is no fixed workflow. There are many options to use AI in your creative workflow. And it's about all of them, you and I, to find out. And I think this is very exciting.
Refik Anadol, thank you so much for joining us. You're an artist, of course. You explore the intersection of technology and computers and art. Could you just talk us through a little bit about your philosophy with that?
Yes, so I'm Refik. I'm a media artist, and I use code, data, algorithms, now maybe 14 years, and try to create art with algorithms, data sets, and last 7 years with AI. I am calling this a thinking brush, assisted by an AI. When I do art, I also imagine the near future. I hope it's more positive. I hope it's exciting, inspiring, and joyful.
Talk to us about your recent work in Unsupervised. It's at the Museum of Modern Art here in New York, and it was really just breathtaking to see it the moment you walk in. It's 380,000 images from over 180,000 works of art, from Picasso to Van Gogh. I'm curious, what was your initial inspiration? Because just looking at it, it's not like something you can just dream up.
So first of all, I think for any living artist, being at MoMA is a dream. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to imagine an artwork and a cutting-edge idea in the lobby of MoMA. For me, what was very inspiring is, of course, technology. And of course, how machines, humans, environments are coming together, how the systems, hardware, software is changing every single of our perception of life. So the fundamental idea was, if a machine can learn, can it dream? But when I say dream, I'm not trying to say that trying to mimic reality. I'm not thinking about like reconstructing exact Picasso, Monet, or an artist in the heroes of in the collection. But I was trying to think about how can we create an AI that can reconstruct new realities. Artists are always constantly like reinventing the imagination context. But for me, the question was, how can I extend my mind as an artist and use AI as a collaborator? And how can we like imagine the new paintings and sculptures or a new form of art?
It's almost like coding is like the paintbrush. And
exactly. I think it's a great example. It's inventing a new brush and a new pigment and a new canvas at the same time. If one day AI can truly dream, I don't think it will be a dry pigment. It won't be like a frozen moment in time. I feel like it is in flux, in change, like water. I love to represent AI's, I guess, decisions in the form of like these fluids.
How do you think about the democratization of art? I mean, the skeptics would say that AI is only going to perhaps make it harder for some of these smaller artists who churn out a lot of art to get a slice of the pie, per se. I mean, do you think that this is going to put some of the power back in the little guy's hands? But then there is something to be said about the concerns around copyright. How are you thinking about the longer term of who's going to benefit from this versus who's going to not benefit from it?
So, I mean, the most important question is where data comes from. And the data is the answer of all these questions. To me, those data sets currently used in like conversational AIs or like ready-made like text to image, text to video, text to sound current algorithms or systems, it's clear that those are our memories as humanity that we are leaving behind us. So if we agreed on this, which I think clearly what we are doing, right? A comment on a website, an image on a social media, they all become these collective models, collective AI models. The second is, of course, this will change the dynamics of creativity. And I do believe that this will create more opportunities in my mind and what I'm seeing than losing opportunities. I'm seeing many artists, many creators going way efficient in their time and space, reaching new levels of imaginations.
The great thing for me, being such a talentless artist, is that now I can pretend that I know what I'm doing, because I can just type in a bunch of words of things I want to exist and have them exist. So for me, this has been fantastically exciting. Jackie's a little better.
I hasten to say that you're a lot better than me.
Even having this conversation about what's good versus what's bad, art is like so pretentious, and it's really intimidating to walk into a museum and just kind of look at it and know exactly the words to use to critique something that was painted in the 1900s or 1800s. We don't even have a vocabulary in a way to describe so many things related to artificial intelligence, emotions and sentience, for example. How do we start to maybe unpack some of that intimidating aspect? Or is AI just going to make it worse, given, I mean, I don't think everyday people know how to, code algorithms into art.
So I think it's an incredibly important question, first of all. My role in humanity is, in my view, is create inspiration, create joy and hope. And to create these three important aspects of life, I found AI is one of the most powerful tools that has, yes, bias in it, but has also the control of creativity or chance and many others. So I think the vocabulary doesn't exist yet, I think. But we are discovering something that has never seen before. And I think what is powerful right now is, as we humanity, we have an access to the tools that can share information instantly. Let's remember Renaissance, for example, right? 1300 to 1600s. I don't believe the people living in Renaissance were aware of they were in Renaissance. But I think right now we have the consciousness and awareness of we are right now in Renaissance.
What would you say your one big prediction for AI is over the next 10 years?
So let's think like this. If one day, if AI decides to decide, right, have a consciousness, and if this AI have its own culture, and if this AI can create art, are we accepting this AI as a being or not? Because fundamentally, answering this being part is really reflects a lot of solutions or problems. So for me, for example, I have an answer for this. I'm happy to invite this AI to our studio, invite the AI as a collaborator, have a seat, and sit together, imagine together. The journey with AI should be similar to finding human in non-human. At least that's what I'm trying to do. Because this really helps me a lot and try to envision what may go wrong and what may help us for humanity.
Nate, after all this, what do you think is more important, the process or the product?
I actually think asking who the creator even is. Because we've talked about creativity. We've talked about art, and we've talked about photography. We haven't touched on comedy, drama, poetry, music. These are all creative things that are going to get impacted.
It really does boil down to imagination. Inputting prompts into some of these tools to generate art still takes a good amount of skill. It's a craft you have to get better at. And so maybe in some ways, artificial intelligence is kind of just like another tool, like a 22nd century paintbrush.
I've got a couple of those actually. Here, ready?